Okay. Well, I sent. Have you all guys have a chance to read the things for this discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I shared my notes with everybody just in case. And basically, it says that there is a final PowerPoint presentation to learn about the HBM. And we are supposed to summarize how it works and discuss the processes and how they relate to the stages of the model and what kind of interventions centered on the process move people through the stages. So this final PowerPoint presentation, I'm opening it.
It's the presentation that was in the reading materials, right?
Right.
It's a last one. There are two presentations in the reading material and this one,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
health belief model. There is one that says health belief model introduction, health belief model modified, and the one that says just plainly health belief model is the one.
So it and the foundation reading, it's the third one down, right?
Yeah, but I found it's under the heading of the relevance. In the relevance instructions, that's the one that says read the final PowerPoint presentation.
It's not the same. It's not the same one.
Well,
I don't really know. Is it the same? Yes, it looks like.
It is for the first like 5 slides, and then they added something into it. They added the cue of action and how you apply it, I guess.
Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen with you if it's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So here it is. So it says, health seeking and other health behavior is thought to be motivated by 4 factors. We have already read about them: perceived susceptibilities, severity, benefits of an action, and barriers to taking that action. And then they added 2 more components, which are cues to actions and self-efficacy. And we go back. Am I pronouncing it well? Self-efficacy or efficacy?
Self-efficacy. Mm-hmm.
Efficacy, okay. And we go back to self-efficacy, which we read from in the beginning of the course, right?
Yep.
Okay. So here they show the constructs again. Do you have any questions or any comments about those concepts?
No, those seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they don't seem like complicated at all.
Yeah, as I was reading about this model, it seems like it was kind of just an add-on of the theory of reasoned action and the theory of planned behavior. It seemed like this was just kind of more developed than those theories.
They in the end of the reading, they mentioned that there is a connection between them or among them. Yes. And here they talk about the decision-making model, which is goal-oriented or directed. And it talks about valence, subjective probability, and it says that perception is the basis of all behavior, which means that people need to believe that they are susceptible to the condition or they will not act. That is something that
Can you guys explain to me the valence?
It's how bad you want the goal, how much you want it to happen to you.
Right.
I've never heard of that word either. That word threw me off.
The only time I've ever heard valence is when you're talking about like the valence shell of an atom.
Right.
That's why I was confused about
valence and covalence. That's exactly right. I had never heard of it in relation to behavior.
Yeah, that was very interesting to see that word there. In fact, in the beginning, when I read that, I thought, okay, they misspelled balance. But then I said, oh, no, they're talking about another thing, which was interesting. So what I found about perception, and maybe you're going to agree with me in this, is that if we are susceptible to a condition, or if not, they will not act. But sometimes people can be susceptible to that condition, and even so, they don't act. But maybe it's a little more philosophical than based on the discussion. And as Jamie said, basically this presentation is the same that we have read. It's based on value expectancy models, and they say that you value the outcome related to the behavior, in this case being healthy, being free from any disease, and people think that their behavior is going to result in that outcome. So if I go and I take my, I don't know, colon cancer check, I feel that the results are going to be positive. So it's a value, that's why it's called the value expectancy model. We still don't know what's going to happen, but we hope the best. We hope for the best. And there is an example here that talks about urban blues musicians who were heavy smokers, and you want to encourage them to quit smoking. So you start a health promotion campaign using the HBM, and you begin developing information materials straight from the 6 constructs. So let's see what it says. So we prepared some brochures and internet materials that contain very clear information about the risks and the severity of lung, throat, and other cancers, as well as emphysema caused by smoking. So, but if I develop those brochures, it's also about risks and severity, but it's also related to the cues that is the information we receive on this. So it says that we've hit on the first 2 constructs, but I will also add cues there. Then number 2 says that we put together flyers, posters, web ads, and radio spots, advertising a number of quit smoking programs. And we are trying to show the costs of quitting, which are very low. And then in the same flyers, we include testimonials from people who've quit and who are ever so happy about their new healthy state of being.
So I have a question before we move on.
Yes.
In the one before this, number 1,
Yes.
would it also be good, for example, because the people we're working with, it's a blues band, right? So one of the things that might also be helpful is seeing how your lung capacity is damaged or hurt by smoking, because you wouldn't be able to play your instruments as well due to bad lung capacity. So it wasn't said in here, but wouldn't that also be another good thing to look up because of the target population?
Yes.
Yeah, so that kind of pulls into something that I was thinking about, because it seemed like in the reading, in the examples that they gave with HIV, AIDS, and mammography, that it was like they almost had to interview the population first to find out where they were in each of the constructs before they developed the intervention addressing those constructs.
Right.
Did it seem like that to you? So it's almost like, you know, you would need to sit down with the bands and kind of figure out, you know, okay, you know, why are you smoking, or what are the barriers and stuff before you even start an intervention?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Because it just seemed like when I was reading the studies at the end, you know, when they were talking about the different studies, rationalizing the HBM interventions in regards to mammography and stuff, you know, they'd found out that the African women had thought that you'd only get breast cancer if you got hit in the breast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they wouldn't have known that unless they interviewed people to find out that that's what they believed.
And it can be connected to these two. Maybe they don't understand how much their lung capacity is affected by smoking, which would jeopardize their performance as musicians. So it's something similar. So women would say, as long as I'm not hit on my breast, everything is fine. They say, well, it's not going to affect my career. So yeah, you made an interesting point with this. So then in the flyers, they continue saying that there are testimonials from people who've quit. And it says that we include those because we're trying to show that the benefits are great. So it says there are four constructs down, 2 to go.
So with this one, to make sure I'm understanding correctly, this would be the reason we would want those brochures is it would help with the value expectancy, right? So they're expecting, because those testimonials are in there of the benefits, the value expectancy just went up in why to do the intervention. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. We have done until now susceptibility, severity, and benefits. It takes, I suppose they also mention barriers, but I don't see anything related to
I think that one of the barriers would be the cost, right? So
yeah, it's true.
It's going to cost me money. It's really hard to quit, things like that. Whereas these are showing the benefits of it, which kind of break down those barriers.
Yes, it's true. Okay. And the last two ones. Now you need a cue to action. What will you use? It says you find out about a famous musician who recently died of cancer because of smoking. Well, that's a little manipulative.
Yeah.
You somehow are able to get some quotes from
Doesn't all of this seem manipulative?
Okay, you get quotes from his wife saying, if only he had quit, and so on. That's manipulation, but sometimes it's necessary. It says, finally, that you put the information in blues clubs and music stores, figuring it out to inspire some action. Now
do you guys see that picture in the corner?
Yeah. And
that's also very manipulative.
Yeah.
It says, I tried quitting, I really did. I just ran out of time and chances. And cigarettes spread all around the gravestone. Okay.
That seems almost too much.
Oh, yeah. And it's a website called whyquit.com. Maybe it's related to that. Interesting. And finally, our last construct is self-efficacy. You put together a brief steps to quitting booklet entitled 1, 2, 3, Quit, congratulating yourself on a music-related title. Then you send out some trained quit coaches to provide a free starter demonstration at local YMCAs and at the meeting of the local musicians union. So I really think that self-efficacy is something very personal, but we try, right? Yeah. To help those people with that. And even these quit coaches are related to these intervention programs in which you have a support group, which may help people to develop self-efficacy, according to what we have already read. Any comments or anything else you'd like to?
We got to see the next slide.
Okay. It says, got all of the constructs covered right? What do you think? Do you think it will work?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think this one was, and I think that was kind of the point, right? Was that we should see this and be like, they did some weird things here.
Yeah, good setup there.
Yeah. Yes, that part of cues to action, I don't really know if they would work. Yeah. For example, here in Colombia, something that people do, they add pictures of throat tumors and lungs with cancer cells and all that to the packs of cigarettes, but don't seem to care about it, and they continue buying them. I remember asking a smoking coworker, hey, aren't you concerned that it could happen to you? Do you think those pictures are gross or anything? And she said, yeah, they're gross, but they don't prevent me from smoking. So I don't know if something like that graveyard and other things would have a real effect on the people. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems like to the people it would be almost surreal, right? Like, oh, that's so out of the ordinary. That's not part of our life. That happened to that one person, but it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah. I think that things like that only hit home after the problem has already hit home.
Yep.
Yes, it's more a reaction than a preventative measure.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. And then it says, suppose you follow up 3 months later and find out that not one of the musicians has quit or even tried. Most of your pamphlets, flyers, and other information have been tossed or not used. Barely a handful of people came to the free quitting demonstrations. What intonation happened?
It kind of reminds me of in the very first PowerPoint we were supposed to read. We talked about how they set up all those vaccinations for TB in places where it'd be easy for them to get to, and barely anybody used it.
Right.
Simply because they still didn't see the need for it and why it would be important for them.
Mm-hmm. And I remember that this week's reading mentions that person-to-person intervention, interviews, and other things, more individual work is very helpful, apart from the group work. I remember this. I think it was for breast cancer when they mentioned that people were interviewed and they received phone calls and were also seen by their physicians or received brochures from their physicians, and it was more effective. So perhaps making it a little more individualized and not just giving away pamphlets and flyers would make it more efficient.
Right. More targeted.
Yes.
Well, I think what you have to do is like kind of think out of the box more. What can you get to the level of the community that you're trying to reach? Like breast cancer 10 years ago, like there was like pamphlets, but now it's like, okay, we're going to bring breast cancer screening to you and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of when you're creating something like this, that's what you have to think about, is how can you think out of the box creatively to reach your target population.
Yes, agreed. Perfect. Okay, it's called What Happened to Us. It's called the Easy Program Structure Illusion. And it says that the key to avoiding this program is to do some research and then target your program and the theory to the people you are trying to help. And then second, don't think of the theory as the complete story. So it's a tool or a guideline and a framework to help you develop an effective program.
Yeah. Here at BYUI, in a lot of the classes that I've taken for program planning and things like that, the teachers keep getting frustrated with the students because we keep trying to go straight to the intervention. We'll hear that there's some sort of problem in a community and we'll say, oh, we need to do this and this. Then the teacher will say, well, did you talk to the people? Did you go in and understand what truly are their needs? Or are you creating a intervention based off of what you think would be best? And so it just kind of goes off of what Elizabeth was saying earlier of this all seems wrong. Where was the go in, talk to the target population, see what they actually need and what they want.
Mhm.
Exactly.
What they
And
think.
yes, and maybe it's because of this willingness that sometimes we have, and we see every single person around us like a probable target. But some research needs to be done. Previous research is very important because
Right.
what would be the point for me, for example, to promote uh, mammographies in my job environment if all the women's do it every year or something like that. So first you need to know if they're doing it, for example, or why would I promote a non-smoking programs among Latter-day Saints if we don't smoke? So getting, yeah, doing
Right.
some research,
Right.
having more information would be very important.
Right.
Okay. And it asks this question: what would you do different? Maybe we have already discussed that.
We did a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you would like to add for this?
No, I mean, it just basically, I think the point is making sure that you're targeting, you know, what you're doing to your specific population, uh, addressing their actual needs and their actual barriers.
Yeah, you need to get to know them better before taking any action. Okay, so it says focus groups or interviews. It's related to what we were saying. Cost and benefits. No insurance. Priority is getting a gig. No time to take off to attend a class for a month. Social benefits. Okay, I don't get that one of priority is getting a gig.
Well, because basically they don't have time. You don't
Okay,
have time. It goes in along with the second one.
okay,
If your
okay,
priority is getting the next job,
okay.
then you're not going to take off time in your evenings to go sit in a YMCA classroom and do a non-smoking seminar.
Okay.
Your priority is to get into the next venue to play.
Yeah.
So, like in reading this, my first thought would have been bringing the education to them. Setting up a system of, okay, if finding out first whether or not they think it's a problem that they're smoking, kind of like what Josh was saying in the beginning about, I think it was Josh that said this, that was like showing them what their breath capacity and their breath holding capacity, demonstrating a smoker versus non-smoker in breath capacity. So then that would be like, maybe I'd be able to actually play better if I had a bigger lung capacity. And then, as you're like gearing towards this specific group, then thinking in terms of, okay, so they're not going to come to me for smoking stopping. Maybe I need to bring it to them,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the hard ones that two that I noticed here that I think would be kind of difficult. Maybe we should discuss what we would do to help them with this is, one, no insurance, and two, social benefits. One with no insurance, the reason that would be difficult is, and that's when we as oftentimes as health educators forget, is the health insurance. How they worry about how are they going to pay for these meetings, how are they going to pay to do everything. Oftentimes people will just bill their insurance, but if they don't have insurance and they're worried about getting the next gig because they don't have the money, how could we help them with that?
Well, I think that ties up with the cost benefit. You know, cigarettes are, at least in California, are upwards of $5, $5.50 a pack. That's an expensive habit a
Mhm.
day. You know, if people are smoking a pack a day, 2 packs a day, that's you know, you're talking $100 a week, easy. So I think the no insurance would be trying from a public health standpoint that whatever intervention is going to be no cost to them, but not only that, we're going to save you $300 a month or $500
Right.
a month because you're not going to be buying cigarettes.
That's a
And
good
that
point.
money can be used, for example, for insurance or many other things.
Right.
Yes. Another
And
thing that
then
I think cost benefit is the cost for us as health educators, because it talks about flyers and brochures and all that, and they can be pricey.
yeah,
And it's so you spend money in something that didn't bring any real benefit for you as a health educator. So maybe it would be even less expensive doing what you have just said, just going to their place and talking to them there, and not
right.
expecting them to come to the place where we are.
And then the other one that I was social benefits,
That's a tough one.
especially because this is a blues band.
Right.
That's part of their culture is smoking and
Uh-huh.
drinking.
Right.
That,
Right.
you know, going to the different blues bars, you know, so that whole social, not to mention that also goes with how do I get a gig if I can't sit there and smoke with the manager? You know, like
Right.
that would be an interesting one to kind of piece out how you could help them with that.
Yes, maybe finding. I remember in the reading they say that they have used peers, people in similar situations who have had stories of success in those things. So maybe using those peers would bring the expected outcome, or help a little more with that. And they definitely need a support group among them, something that would, so if I quit smoking, you quit smoking, my friends, my band, everybody's in the same thing.
Well, or you could be like California, where you outlaw smoking in all public buildings. So there's no more smoking in bars. So there's no more smoking in music venues. So that puts a crimp in everybody's style when they're going that way.
But that is, it happened here some years ago too. They started this law, and it's been very beneficial for those of us who don't smoke and want to go to a restaurant or other places. Oh yes,
Yeah.
blessed be that.
Well, and in California, it also has had, I mean, that in combination, I mean, in this specific topic, but that in combination with the public announcement blitz and the taxes on cigarette packs. So they raised the taxes, they increased the education, and they changed the laws. And smoking now is dropped to only 20 to 25% of the population when it used to be 80% of the population smoking. So
That's good.
it in combination, it was ultimately effective. A little draconian, but
Okay, and finally, the focus of your perceived severity themes shifts from the disease consequences of smoking to the potential cost of losing future gigs and careers. Maybe you have a tagline that says, got throat cancer, can't get gigs. Got lung cancer, can't get gigs. Or Charles is a blues man. He smoked 3 packs a day. Now his only audience is a couple of nurses. That's awful.
That's a terrible picture.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen those? I don't know if you have, but there's an ad on television about like this guy who's smoking, and this mail delivery guy comes up with the package, and the package is like this really gross mouth that like all of a sudden it's in him because of his smoking.
I haven't seen
this
that.
picture and that theme kind of reminds me of that.
That's funny.
And then, to demonstrate that the costs of quitting are relatively low, this time you focus on quit smoking modalities that the blues musician could really use, like the nicotine replacement patch, which is easily available at local grocery stores and pharmacies and doesn't take critical time away from performing. Okay, that's one.
Does it show what the price comparison would be between the nicotine patch and how much smoking costs? Because I feel like those patches are kind of expensive.
Yeah, but I think it's like $30 for a month's supply versus $5 to $10 a day for a smoking habit.
So it's not just 10% of what they spend, their average money spent in cigarettes. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it says a successful program for HBM is mammography screening intervention, which we have already read about. It says that in Maryland, outreach initiatives have been so unsuccessful in engaging low-income African-American women in mammography screening. Using the HBM, a culturally targeting intervention was implemented to promote a no-cost mammography screening program. Data were collected from women 40 years and older on their history of mammography use and their knowledge and beliefs about breast cancer. A 50% screening rate was achieved among 119 eligible participants. Significant predictors of screening behaviors were perceived barriers, lack of insurance, and limited knowledge. Again, lack of insurance, and again, limited knowledge. Okay. And weaknesses or critiques. This is what we read at the very end of the text, when it says that there is no room for emotions or for environmental factors in the HBM. And it says that the calculations will vary based on the kinds of information and interpretations being made. So if our interpretations are wrong, there isn't much success in what we're doing. It says that the HBM assumes that everyone has equal access to and an equivalent level of information from which to make a rational calculation. That's interesting, because if we go back, many people are just don't know. They don't have information about many things. And it does not account for disparities in knowledge. And finally, it talks about the age factor, too young or too old, do not care. Interesting, I would agree. Some very young people have this irrational thinking that they don't, especially among teenagers, they don't want to die, but they live on the edge, many of them.
Yeah.
And finally, recognizing the barriers. Maybe because barriers are very subjective. For me, perhaps it would be an economic barrier. For other people, it would be time. And for other people, it would be the family, religion, just...
Right. That's where I think in this, kind of going back to what I was talking about, it's like almost in order to use this theory, you have to do a data project ahead of time in order to cater to that specific group, to find out what they even need in order to use the constructs effectively.
Yes, again, we need information. We need to do some research ahead of time. And well, that's the end of this first part. Any comments or questions?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. So then, moving on to the discussion, it says that we discussed this scenario. Have you had a chance to read it before?
Yeah.
Which one?
The one related to young people getting tattoos?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And the key discussion point here is, what is the behavior behind tattooing? Or tattooing? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, tattooing.
Okay, tattooing. Thanks.
What do you think, Jamie?
I thought that this was an interesting topic to put in the lesson material,
Uh-huh.
given the age group. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that the reading says that many teenagers do that just to see how their parents are going to react, or how the figure of authority at home is going to react?
It might be, but I think it's kind of changed. Times have changed. TV, movies. There's a
Yeah.
lot of tattoos that are just like, that's the cool thing. The cool kids have tattoos. And social media, oh, look, I got this new tattoo. You know, it's kind of become this, tattoos and drinking and smoking are all the glory, you know? And so it kind of
Well,
goes along with...
I think it's age related too. So yeah, maybe a teenager gets something, you know, to see a reaction from their parents, but you know, most the people that are, you know, getting tattoos are young adults. That they're beyond, you know, wondering how their parents are going to react to it. They're, you know, I don't know. I look at them as being more self-directed and self-sufficient. I think they're kind of beyond caring what their parents are going to think.
Yes, it's what it says, the choice between acceptance by peers and rejection by parents and other authority figures. But what is interesting in this is that tattoos are something that you cannot get rid of very easily. And what about in a few years when you see it in hindsight and you say, well, I was very stupid and now I don't know what to do with this horrible tattoo that I have on my arm or my back.
Well, and I don't think they realize, like, as you get older, it obviously doesn't look attractive. And I think that media kind of glorifies it. Well, like, it's awesome to have a tattoo, but they don't realize, like, the effects of, you know, tattooing. Like, you're dealing with needles. If you don't go to a clean place, you can get a disease from that. So I think that the media just goes on, like, how awesome it is with the whole behavior of drinking and everything, but they don't realize that the risk that they could put themselves in, and they're expensive too. The cost benefit of it is they're really expensive, but they do it anyways, you know.
Yes, it's very expensive getting the tattoo and getting rid of your tattoo too.
Yes, getting rid of your tattoo is very expensive.
Very painful.
And painful. Yes.
And not always successful.
Yes. One of my mission companions had been, well, you know, a rebellious teenager, and he had a huge CTR tattoo on his arm, and he decided to remove it during his mission, and gosh, it was so painful for him and so difficult. And he had decided to do it because he said, I cannot go around preaching the gospel and having the investigators seeing this enormous tattoo that I have on my arm. So I decided to do it. Again, I would find it as an example of maybe he wanted to be popular among his teenage friends, and in the end, perhaps they were not his friends anymore after he came back from his mission, or before it happened. Yes. Finally, anything else you would like to mention about this? Okay, suppose we move on. Then, the application assignment. Here it says, read the lesson and application assignment instructions together. Open the assignment table. Begin developing interventions for the constructs together while each group members save their own copy. Take advantage of the remaining time to work on the assignment. Help one another by answering any question that might arise. So let's see.
So just to throw out a question about the tattoo aspect.
Okay.
So if kind of going along the line of even the jazz band and, social acceptance. So what's the, how as health educators, or if you wanted to change a behavior, how do you combat that? It's, kind of goes back, Josh, you really touched on it. When you have a culture surrounding a behavior and acceptance of a behavior, even extrapolating this into behaviors in inner city environment that perpetrates this poverty cycle, and it's like you have to go in and break the culture in order to really shift the behavior. So that's something that, at least in the models that we've seen so far, has only kind of touched on that subject. The TRA and the TRB sort of lightly touched on that, but when you're talking about not getting the support you need for an exercise program, well, that's easy. You put yourself in a group exercise program and boom, you got a bunch of support. But when you're talking about when your whole social circle is involved in this, they've, in my drug abuse and abuse class that I've taken, I don't know if you guys have taken that class yet, but in drugs of use and abuse, and when they're talking about addiction, that's the whole piece about addiction that is also very difficult, is that more than the physiological changes that have occurred inside your body from the addiction, the behaviors and the smell of the place that you were when you used to use, and the friends you were around when you used to use, they trigger the physiological change in your body just like the drug does. And so it's like, in order to beat that drug, you've got to change all of those triggers. Mm-hmm. And so kind of extrapolating that forward, maybe it's just overthinking and making it more complicated, but it's like you said, Josh, the culture has really changed from like when I was in high school, which was, admittedly a long time ago. But now it's culturally acceptable to have a sleeve on your arm, tattooed sleeve, It's like, how do you shift that mindset?
Yeah. One of the things that I thought of as you were saying that is, and it's kind of something we've already discussed, is you have to do individual or small group interventions. And what's interesting, as we were talking about all this, what I thought of is our mission. Like as church members, when we go on missions, you pull them from their culture. So I served in Mexico, which is heavily Catholic.
Mm-hmm, right.
That is the culture. Even if they don't go to church, their culture is Catholicism. Their family is Catholic, and that's that. And so when you go in there and you have to do it individually. If you were to do it in a community, the community would immediately say no, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting how the church has that's how we do our missionary work, is on that individual and small group basis.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about too, and they brought it up in the reading when they were talking about mammograms in the African American female population, and they were saying, so you take this one small group and then you get them to teach their peers and their friends, so that you arm them with the information, and then you send them out to spread the word amongst their people and population.
Yeah, I think it's very big about the precept upon precept. You're not going to go out there and change the whole thing, but the whole community. If you work on little aspects of the problem, eventually over time you're going to see that people are going to start to do it and catch on.
It's like marketing, finding your key player, giving them the cool sunglasses, and then letting everybody see them.
Yes, I guess there must be somebody in that group that doesn't have a tattoo. And maybe focusing on that person, knowing why that person doesn't have a tattoo or something would also help. And inviting them to be a voice for the others. Because their culture is swallowing them. Mm-hmm. And it happens with tattoos, with unprotected sex, with many other things. It's what they call the new normal now, and changing those things is hard. And seriously, I don't think you're making it hard. I think it's perhaps even more difficult than working with people who are addicts to different substances, because you know that drug addicts are sometimes social pariahs, but people with tattoo are widely accepted. Mm-hmm. Great. So here it says that we can work on the boxes that we have in the chart. So the columns are construct, intervention, description, and expected impact. It invites us to identify a target population and choose the different ways to fill the boxes. In the intervention boxes, it says, what individual interventions are you developing to apply the constructs as a health educator? And it says from the 8 different types. Mm-hmm. That's one. Then description boxes. Describe or explain specifically what the intervention is going to do. And it says, remember, as the health educator, what specifically are you going to do to use the health belief model constructs, in this case related to intervention. Be direct and describe specifically what you are going to do. And finally, expected impact boxes. What do you expect to happen as a result of using that construct with the intervention on your target population? If you find it fine, maybe we can use one of your charts as an example, and we can also go developing ours.
So I thought that in the reading on page 4, there's a table 3.1, and I don't know if I missed it last week if they had a table like this, but I thought this was pretty useful. It says it gives a concept, perceived susceptibility. It gave the definition, and then it gave different applications of it, like define the population at risk, determine their risk levels, personalize risk based on a person's characteristics or behavior, or make perceived susceptibility more consistent with the individual's actual risk. So it gave different applications for each of the constructs that I thought was pretty easy.
So it can be like a base for everything. Let's say,
Right.
Jamie, what do you think your target population would be? Or are we supposed to work with people with tattoo, guys, or we can use our own?
I think we're supposed to come up with the target population. And
Yeah. I would say it's adolescents, right? That's what I was thinking.
Are we applying that to the tattooing? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, it says that we have to do it for the tattooing.
Is it?
Yeah, up in the very top instructions, follow the steps by applying the health model with adolescents.
Got it. So adolescents.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the target population. People have a question. When it says intervention from the 8 different types, I'm a little lost there. What 8 different types is it referring to?
Let's see.
I wonder if it meant the 6 different types.
I would say, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I was checking my intervention chart, the one we did during the second week, but it said no, that's not the same thing. So I suppose it's also 6. Yeah, perfect. Okay, is any chart that you would like to fill? So if we're talking first about adolescence and then perceived susceptibility, I suppose it's then related to teenagers getting tattoos, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would think. Or, yeah.
Say that again.
It'd be them getting the tattoos. It'd be the perceived, the first one.
So the perceived susceptibility, when it says define populations at risk and the risk levels, personalized risks based on persons' characteristics or behaviors, what you just read, Elizabeth, what would be the potential risks for teenagers when they receive a tattoo?
So some of the potential risks would be getting an infection from a not reputable artist.
Okay. Also, even HIV infection, right?
Yeah.
So that's perhaps one of the risks they would have.
So with perceived susceptibility, would we put that in under the description? The intervention or expected impact?
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, I'd be,
Yeah, I'm a little confused too.
Well,
Description box.
I think we have to
Is
come
it
up with intervention. So like we have to figure out, okay, for that risk of HIV, what can we do to intervene with them from not getting disease? That's how I would perceive it as.
Mm-hmm.
So would the description then of the perceived susceptibility be that risk of HIV infection, so that our intervention would focus on that, and what our expected impact would also be all focused on that? Or
well? So okay, so in the table it says the definition of perceived susceptibility is a belief about the chances of experiencing a risk or getting a condition or disease. So that would be a teenager. What would a teenager think is going to be the result of his action? So I don't think a teenager is ever even going to occur to them that they could get HIV. So they're not going to think of them as being susceptible to that. That kind of goes along the same line about the condom use. When in the reading they talked about how in the young adult population they were talking to, that their perceived risks were more about getting pregnant than getting HIV. So focusing any discussion on HIV didn't have any effect on whether or not they used condoms. Focusing on whether or not they were going to get pregnant is what motivated them to use the condoms. So we can't really, I don't think that any teenager is going to think that they're going to get HIV from getting a tattoo. So I think focusing an intervention on, even though the reality is that's a possibility for them, I don't think an intervention focusing on HIV is going to be effective for adolescents. I think what might be more effective is what you're putting on your body today. Is that goofy that you put on your calf gonna be as exciting to you when you're 35 as it is to you when you're 17?
right.
Yes. So basically, we would say that it's more. I was checking the interventions table, and some of one part of the interventions is health educational strategies. So basically, teaching them about what you have just said, more than just the potential diseases, or not just focusing on that, but I think adding other things to make them understand that a tattoo is something permanent, and perhaps the consequence of that tattoo are going to be permanent too.
So how would we write that up? So if we were to come up with an intervention in discussing their susceptibility,
I would write in intervention, I would add health education, and in the description perhaps something like teaching the teenagers that a tattoo isn't something temporary, or is something that is going to be with them permanently for the rest of their lives, perhaps.
so addressing the permanency.
Yes, it would be.
Of the decision. And the potential health impacts.
Yes.
think getting hepatitis A is
It's
more of a
another
risk
risk.
than
Yes.
HIV, right?
Skin cancer, maybe? Maybe not.
I don't think so.
No.
The reason why I don't think HIV is a risk is there's not a lot of blood involved in tattoos. HIV, don't you have to have fluids transfer?
Well, anything that pierces your skin
Yes. It would
can
be-
help you with HIV. And there is some blood when they do finish the tattoo. They usually have to cover it for a little bit because it did bleed. So there is definitely a chance for HIV.
Well, and even the ink, I think sometimes ink has health benefits to it, or health, not benefits,
Yeah.
but health, you know.
Oh, it's already 9 o'clock.
Yes. Okay, so I don't know if it's okay with you guys. Do you want to continue doing this, or do you have any questions about this? So we can continue with that. In my case, it's 10 o'clock here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Any comments? I think I got a little hint of what I'm supposed to do while filling this chart, now that we have discussed.
And I think we can always email or text each other if we have more questions about
Yeah.
it.
More questions.
Question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes, it's okay. So who it says in the end of the discussion we choose the group leader for next week, and that's all. So who would like to be the group leader?
I can do it.
Okay. Perfect. So are we meeting next week Saturday?
So next Saturday was the day I wasn't able to meet on Saturday because I got put on a work schedule.
Mhm.
That was why we met tonight.
Right.
Yes,
So then for next week's relevant.
Next week, the following week's Saturday. It's on the.
So a week from Saturday.
on
Yeah,
the
so a week
23rd.
from Saturday.
Yes, a week from
Yeah.
Saturday.
So yes, I can do that. On the
Okay.
23rd. And what time?
I'm officially on vacation since next Monday, so you tell me, guys.
I don't care what time we do it. I'm open.
What
now.
if we do it at 11 o'clock your guys' time? So that would be 9 o'clock for Elizabeth and 10 o'clock for me.
Okay, so 11
Alright.
o'clock for us. Okay, perfect. Let's do that.
Does that work?
Yeah, that would work.
Okay.
All right, and I've got it in there correctly.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. And then Guillermo, you know how to turn it in?
Yeah, no problem. In
Okay.
fact, I saved the recording in my computer just in case.